morning and welcome to the Board of County Commission meeting. It's October 1st, 2022. And thank you for joining us this morning. We'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. With the invocation by Jay Rassner, First Assembly of God. Please come forward. Please rise for the invocation.
Shall we pray? Lord, we thank you for this day. And we thank you for your presence that's among us. Lord, this city, this county has been through a lot in the last few weeks. But Lord, I thank you that you said that you would never leave us nor forsake us. Lord, I thank you that in the time of tragedy, the people that circled together and came together, I thank you for our first responders. I thank you for our neighbors. I thank you for construction workers and those that said, I've got to do something. God, may we never give up on compassion. May that always be a part of our life to see how we can help others. And Lord, I pray today that as they meet, as they go through so much, Lord, you said that we're to ask you for wisdom. And Lord, I pray today that each of these people here today will seek your wisdom, and as decisions are made, that you will guide and direct. And Lord, thank you again for these people. Bless them and bless this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Pastor, for your kind words. We have a couple ceremonial presentations this morning, but first we're going to do the third quarter length of service awards to our county employees here to recognize them. So, Roger, you want to start that off first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you've already introduced the item.
Board, if I could have the board come down front, we'll be greeting the employees down here.
Good morning. I'm Victoria Apis with the Board of County Commissioners Human Resources Department, and I'm accompanied by my colleague this morning, Yeleni Skelton. We have the honor this morning of joining County Manager Roger DeJarlais to present the Length of Service Awards for all eligible employees for the third quarter of 2022. Collectively, these awards represent 1,210 years of service to the Lee County government. For the employees who are receiving an award this morning, as I call out your name, please step forward to receive your award from County Manager DeJarlais and to greet our commissioners and county administration. We're going to ask that you then hold off onto the sides, and we're going to take a group photo at the end once we've presented all of the awards this morning. As I start calling each group by years of service, I ask that everyone in that group please stand and move to the back of chambers to wait for your name to be called. So we're going to start with those years with 5 years of service, or those employees with 5 years of service now. All right. Hunter Andrews for Parks and Recreation. Jennifer Brewer Dano for Procurement. Tommy Cassell, Sports Development. Nicholas DeFilippo from DCD. Thomas DeRath, VCB. Aaron Hailstone, Human Resources. Lydia Hernandez, DOT. Melanie Hicks, Human Resources. Kevin Laux, County Manager's Office. Carson McNulty, Library. William Moore, Library. Martin Ortiz, Public Safety. Tommy Sandvig, County Lands. Miguel Santiago, Parks and Rec. Danielle Turner, DOT. Jesse Zoukaitis, Parks and Rec. We're going to move on now to our 10 years of service. Stephen Bray, Utilities. Stephen Fort, DOT. Kimberly Garrett, Parks and Rec. Lori Goshorn, Parks and Rec. Stephen Matukas, Utilities. Melissa Pauletta, Human and Vet Services. Richard Parbs, DOT. Shane Ratcliffe, Public Safety. Paul Syak, Utilities. All right, we're going to move on to 15 years of service now. Hector Areola, Transit. Jeffrey Bristow, Innovation and Technology. Krista Britton, Public Safety. Summer Crozier, Human Resources. Lee Elkins, Human Resources. Sherry Gillette, Public Safety. Caleb Gonzalez, Solid Waste. Jason Hinman, DOT. Mickey Rozdalski, DCD. Katie Welton, County Manager's Office. We're going to move on to 20 years of service. Kevin Anderson, DOT. Dora Schilling, Library. Arthur Shields, Facilities and Construction Management. We're going to move on to 25 years of service now. Aldine Brown, DOT. Bree Calderon, DOT. Beverly Dearborn, Facilities and Construction Management. Michelle Lindsay, DOT. Scott McDill, Public Safety. Darwin Rout, Parks and Rec. We're going to move on to 30 years of service now. Andrea Frazier, County Attorney's Office. Susan Stewart, Library. We're going to move to 35 years of service. Just one. Donnie Miles, Facilities and Construction Management. So that concludes our awards. We'd like to end by congratulating all of the employees recognized here this morning. Thank you for your service to our community. We'll ask that all of the employees recognized please come to the front and bunch in as tight as you can so that Sam can get a nice picture.
All together? Yeah. You want to put those out of the way? Yeah.
Hey, Kevin. Is Doug still?
No, hasn't been for years.
So they can see your chin. Oh, how low is that? I'm glad we did that again.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. That was really cool.
Was it good? It's been since COVID? Has it been that
Yeah,
long?
we haven't done it since COVID. What's up, Kyle? Tighten up, folks. Tighten up.
Come on. One org. They love each other.
Yeah, it'd be hard. That's nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Have a great day. Good seeing you. Yeah, that's like when a baseball team wins the World Series, they get to go to the White House and stand on the steps and take a picture. Like a group photo. Cecil and I got to go there for one of those, by the way, one time.
Yeah, but I've had lunch.
You do. That's far more impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that is. Especially the president.
I was trying to think of how to time. I did just talk.
Yeah, you did.
I did,
Reagan?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reagan tops all.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Roger, thank you. It was nice to do that again. We have not done that in a few years, I think, probably because of COVID. So it's nice to recognize our employees again. So.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is nice to be able to do it again. Because of COVID, we weren't shaking hands, getting that close for a long time, but what you've seen today is the backbone of the organization.
This is why our community is recovering so great from the hurricane, so because all our employees throughout the county. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
As soon as they get out the door a little bit more, we're continuing on with the agenda. I would like to recognize, beginning the meeting this morning, we have Sheriff Carmine Marcino here in the audience. We have Fort Myers Beach Town Council Dan Ellers is here this morning. We have Therese Everly here from the hospital board. We have Ben Siegel as our director from the airport. And Matt Caldwell, our property appraiser, is here too. And our past councilman, Doug Congress, is here from Sanibel. So thank you again for all your service. Okay, our next ceremony will be Commissioner or Vice Chairman Ray Sendelli.
Well, good morning. What a great way to start the day. I'll read this resolution from the Board of Ed and Commissioners.
See if they're here. Let's see if they're here. The homeless, I'm sorry, you have the third quarter, wait, you have the Nurse Week.
I do.
Okay. Are you here for the Nurse Week? If you could, please come to the podium here. And just stay right here at the podium, and Commissioner Sendelli will read that in the record. Then after that, we'll come up for a picture. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, Michael and Katie's here, and Nick's here from the hospital.
Michael, good morning.
And Therese. Thank you.
Good morning. Whereas perioperative nurses specialize in the care of patients immediately before, during, and after surgical and other invasive procedures, and whereas serving in settings ranging from traditional hospital-based operating rooms to ambulatory surgery centers and physicians' offices, perioperative nurses work to provide the safest care possible for patients undergoing surgical and other invasive procedures. Whereas perioperative nurses assess individual patients' needs prior to, throughout the surgical or invasive experience, develop, implement, and continuously evaluate a plan for care of the patient and prepare the operating room and patient for the procedures. And whereas perioperative nurses are responsible for monitoring all aspects of the patient's condition for the duration of each procedure, and through professional care and patient-centered expertise are responsible for care coordination after the procedure. And whereas patients undergoing surgery and other invasive procedures and their loved ones rely on the skills, knowledge, and expertise of perioperative registered nurses who uphold the long tradition of improving surgical safety and the quality of patient care. And whereas Perioperative Nurse Week recognized the contributions registered nurses make to patient safety and the opportunities of challenges facing the profession. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida, proclaims November 13th through 19th, 2022 as Perioperative Nurses Week, duly executed this first day of November 2022, Board of County Commissioners, signed by Cecil Pendergrass. I don't know what you can possibly say about the work that you do and the care that you provide and the value that you bring to our community. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everybody just get right in front here. We'll get a picture.
She's our senior. She sings to our patients.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you very much. If you want to say a few words, please do.
Go to the podium.
Thank you.
I want to thank the Board of Commissioners. I've been a perioperative registered nurse for 24 years, becoming a nurse at 51. And in January, I will retire just before my 76th birthday. I cannot think of a better career, a more satisfying career than taking care of the patients of Lee County, Charlotte County, Collier County. I'm actually the pediatric specialist in the OR, so I take care of all of the children from Golisano, and it's been a joy. On behalf of the perioperative nurses at Lee Health and the Lee County, I thank you so much for this recognition. We love what we do. We are on call all the time, midnight calls, 2 a.m. calls, but it's such a pleasure for us. And I thank you and hope to never see you in my OR.
Great. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sindelli. If I could have anyone here for the Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Month, come forward, please. Oh, Therese. Thank you. Kathy, I didn't see Kathy sitting here. I didn't see Kathy there. Good morning.
Yeah, if we could have everybody that partakes with hunger and homelessness in partnership with the coalition. Some of you are in this audience and you did not know that was going to happen. I want to see you up here. The Lee County Sheriff's Department, our law enforcement agencies, if I know you're all here, you all work so hard in this space. Thank you. Look at this team.
Brought the whole team.
Yeah. A lot has happened since
Well,
this time
definitely going
last
to be busy for the next year, so definitely we want to recognize you. So I'm going to read the resolution in the record. Whereas this year there were an estimated 3,400 people who experienced homelessness in Lee County. The 2022 annual homelessness census indicated homeless persons indicated 8.39% of the chronically homeless, and 49 were families and 86 children. And whereas the primary cause of homelessness include poverty, lack of affordability housing, extremely low-income individuals, access to adequate health care, and often involve issues of domestic violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Whereas the impact of Hurricane Ian has prolonged the impact, along with COVID-19, has caused increased financial and housing instability throughout Lee County. Whereas the mission of the Lee County Homelessness Coalition is to advocate, educate, and promote awareness of issues, obstacles facing homelessness individuals in Lee County through community collaboration, planning, and finding solutions. Whereas this month of November is designed as Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Month, is educate and bring public awareness to the needs of the homeless. Now therefore be resolved, the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida proclaims the month of November 2022 as Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Month in Lee County, and recognize this is a month of special importance. Encourage all citizens to recognize that many people do not have housing and need support from citizens, public, private, nonprofit service entities. Duly executed the first day of November by myself, the chairman. Thank you.
Would you like me to speak first?
Yeah, go ahead and speak
Okay,
first.
all right. On behalf of the Lee County Homeless Coalition and these incredible members, many of them could not be here today because they are out there doing outreach. They're working very hard. I want to thank you for bringing awareness of hunger and homelessness in our community. We most certainly could never have anticipated the devastating impact Ian has had on our community. We have witnessed firsthand a dramatic increase in those experiencing homelessness for the first time in their life in this aftermath. While there's much work to be done, the healing has begun. We must continue to be resolute in our commitment to provide access to safe, attainable housing for those that experience homelessness prior to the storm and for those that have been displaced because of the storm. I am confident with our collective efforts, continued compassion, and care of our residents of Lee County, we will come out stronger. I thank each of you for your leadership during this unprecedented times. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you.
Bring the whole crew.
Come on, Danny.
Squeeze in a little bit. All right, now the professional.
Come on. Hang on, Michael.
Not so fast.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your service and everything you do for our community throughout the year. Okay, well, time to get to work now. We have no items to be moved on the recap. We'll go to the consent agenda items. Items to be pulled by the discussion by the board. Commissioner Greenwell, anything to be pulled? Consent. Commissioner Hammond?
I have none today.
I have none. Commissioner Sendelli? None. Commissioner Wayne?
None.
None? Okay. At this point, public comment on the consent agenda. Public comment on the consent agenda. Close public comment, come back to the board. We have a motion to approve the balance and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any other discussion?
Just wanted to point out, Mr. Chairman, we do have a couple Conservation 2020 purchases still on the consent agenda too, so glad to see that program continuing on.
Very strong. Thank you. Any objections? No objection, motion continues. Administrative agenda, item 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mickey, will you come to the podium, please? Mr. Chair, we're asking you to, the commission to award disaster assistance state housing initiatives partnership grant agreements today. Ms. Rogowski, please make the presentation.
Great. Good morning, Mickey. Congratulations on your 15 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Mickey Rozdolski with Community Development. Today, we are asking that the board approve distribution or awarding these disaster assistance grants made possible through our state housing initiatives partnership. These grants total close to $5 million and will be used to help people stay in their homes by funding emergency repairs, doing other home rehabs, assisting with deductible insurance, and also mortgage and rental assistance. These will be provided to our nonprofit partners and will help low and moderate family income households remain housed through this recovery period.
Very good.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, just for folks who are watching too, you know, the governor had made that announcement about $5 million for SHIP money that would be used for deductibles, potentially. This is not part of that then. This is above that, right?
This is above that. This is actually money that was allocated to us before the hurricane, and we were able to pivot this allocation towards meeting the disaster assistance strategies. So we did learn yesterday that we will be receiving a little bit more than $2 million of that $5 million set aside through the SHIP program that the governor announced, and we are hoping to have that application online on Friday for people to start applying for that assistance.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Motion?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have Commissioner Sendelli spoke up first. A second, Commissioner Sendelli. Any public comment on this item? Come back to the board. Any objection? Objection, motion carries. Item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2, asking you to approve an update to the county flood regulations with an expedited committee review process. Mr. Loveland, please make the presentation.
Thank you, Roger, and good morning, Commissioners. The item before you today, if you'll recall, back in June, we had come to you to get approval to take a couple of amendments to our flood ordinance, our flood regulations forward through the committee review process. We hadn't scheduled those yet when the hurricane hit, and the hurricane has now created a sense of urgency in dealing with not only those changes. There were 3 additional changes that the Building Industry Association had come before you and asked us to consider. We're still in the process of evaluating those, but the request today is to get board authorization to take the amendments through an expedited committee review process, which only goes to one committee, the local planning agency, rather than going through 3 committees. We do have a special local planning agency meeting scheduled for next Monday at 9 a.m. at Admin East to consider these revisions and make a recommendation to the board with the idea that they would come back to you for adoption at your November 15th meeting.
Great. Thank you. May clarify, so we'll be looking back at this again within 2 weeks, so we'd expedite this for the community for the permits.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Mr. Chair, just one for clarification too, under the column where it says find market value, does the homeowner also have the option to get a private appraisal as well?
Yes,
okay.
that is written into our ordinances, yes.
Excellent.
And thank you to Matt Caldwell's office for helping us with that as far as getting those numbers, so thank you. Okay, we'll go to public comment this time. We have one card, Richard Derling. Anybody else like to speak on this item number 2 after Richard?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Richard Durling, representing the Building Industry Association. The recommendations that were brought by staff, option B, under the proposed language is what the association would agree to. We are concerned, though, about the determination of value and how that is handled. With regards to Commissioner Hammond's comments about private property or private appraisers, we just wonder whether or not there's a capacity there to accommodate all the people who are going to be needing to have a private appraiser. In addition to that, the cost of construction has increased as much as 40% over the last couple of years, and it's continuing to rise, particularly now with this event. To add an additional 40% to the assessed value shown on the Lee property appraisal site is a straightforward and fair way of determining market value. Everyone can easily see the value from the property owners themselves to Lee County staff. It would make it easier and quicker to administer rebuilding, and if determining market value is difficult, it will encourage owners to do work without permits and without licensed and insured contractors. So we would encourage you to look at adding additional percentage to the assessed value as a straightforward way of determining market value for the 50% rule. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? We'll come back to the board for discussion. Dave, are you still here? You can come back up. Any questions for staff at this time? Dave, I think if also from our briefing, this is also going to go from permit to permit as far as a timeline instead of a timeline, correct?
Yes, sir. The recommendations based on what the BIA had asked for, that's what staff is going to be recommending as it goes through the LPA review and then come back to you, that we change from a 5-year cumulative assessment of cost to permit by permit. The question of value, we are proposing some revisions to the description just based on some state proposed language. That's really just a clarification. But we've had discussions with the property appraiser's office about the number that he provides that's in his estimation is supposed to be represent market value of the structure, and that's what the code calls for, is market value. So he wasn't sure what kind of percentage you would add on top of that if you were going to try to do that.
Right. And every scenario is going to be different. Every home's going to be different in Lee County based upon work, or they're 80 years old, or they're 8 months old. So
Right.
Depends on what happens as far as the damage. Any questions, Commissioner White?
I know it may be a little unorthodox, but since he's here, and I hate to put him on the spot, but maybe property appraiser Matt Caldwell can come up and describe the fair market value and how he arrived at his number. I respect the speaker's comments. Certainly, I think it's important to clarify on the record, so I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Matt.
No, that's fine. For the record, property appraiser Matt Caldwell, glad to answer specific questions. Traditionally, your permitting staff and the city jurisdictions have relied on our depreciated cost approach numbers. Those have become less and less reliable as time has progressed. We know, for example, in the last 3 years, whereas a straight line depreciation is what we've traditionally used in evaluating that, our homes have actually appreciated. The physical asset itself, not just the land, but unusually the physical homes have appreciated in contrast to how the cost approach is developed. And so that makes that approach highly unreliable just in general. So if you look at our process year to year, we don't rely on that number for developing the conclusion of what the taxable value is already. We look at primarily the sales comparison approach using the plethora of sales that are available in this market, thousands of residential sales, for example, each year. So looking at this incident, recognizing that your staff was going to go from probably less than a dozen 50% permits in a regular quarter to hundreds of thousands potential properties that are going to come in and interact with both the county and the cities, we tried to come up with a more accurate number for them to rely on, for the taxpayers to rely on. So we took the just value, the value that everyone saw on their trim notices in August based on January 1 of this year, and allocated that between those 4 components of value: your land itself, the land improvements, things like your seawalls and your docks, the associated building improvements like your pool, and then the building value itself. And that building value is the value that you would rely upon as a taxpayer in interacting with the office. I do want to note that no matter what, that number is never going to be as accurate as a professional appraisal conducted today. Obviously, a pre-storm appraisal based on about 4 weeks ago is going to be more accurate than our value from 10 months ago. In addition, the way that we develop our values is for just value. That is not the same as market value as people traditionally understand. And so that kind of encapsulates a little bit of the differential that you hear people talk about. Ultimately, it's going to be up, I leave it up to you as the jurisdiction to decide how to use that number, but we think what we've developed and presented to the community with this new letter is more accurate and more helpful for the taxpayer and for the jurisdictions to utilize.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Property Appraiser, is there a 15% reduction or some sort of reduction in the numbers that are reported to DOR?
So part of this is wrapped up in process. The FEMA rule talks about making an adjustment to the assessed values. That reflects that many jurisdictions around the country use a reduction at the end of their calculations. So they develop their model, and then they take a flat 10 or 20% off of that before they send out the tax bill. Florida does not do that. We are required. The main difference between just value and market value is that we do consider the cost of sale, the commission you pay your realtors, closing costs that are wrapped into that, so that the number in just value should reflect pure cash consideration altogether. But that happens on the front end of the calculation. So to then try to turn that back around, and it's not standardized. It depends on the property type. It depends on how we apply it. We have multiple models. You have a different one for the single family than you do for the offices, than you do for the condos, for example. And we're looking at what's actually happening in the market for each one of those. So there isn't a standard number that I can tell you, if you use this at the end of the formula, you're going to get more or closer to what is market value. There certainly is a difference because it's calculated at the front end, but the way the model works through that process to give you an answer at the end, I can't just give you a, hey, here's a number, and that's going to get you there. It's part of the challenge of using a number developed for one intended use for a different use that it wasn't developed for.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
If I may?
Yes. Mike.
I'm just curious that with the way this process is being done, I think you've done a great job, by the way. I've reviewed the numbers. I do have concern, though, of putting additional cost on our homeowners, that if they are in this situation, that they have to hire an appraiser. So I would ask this board, would it be possible to add some percentage on top of that, whether it be 5%, 10%, something that would make up the difference of these people maybe being able to rebuild or not rebuild. But a lot of people are not going to have the funds to hire a private appraiser. Would that be something we could consider?
You want me to speak to that, Mr. Chair? So again, the way that we develop our models, I can't give you what would be the perfect percentage. If you were asking my opinion about how to approach that, I think you'd be well served to look at what's already been submitted between other jurisdictions, see what the differential is that exists out there, and if there is clearly in the marketplace some difference that's going to get you to a level of processing efficiency and taxpayer benefit that you might want to consider. But I also recognize that this is going on right now. So the quicker you guys come to a decision, the happier the taxpayers are going to be. I know on your agenda you're going to talk about potentially how to address these long-term hurricane issues, so that may be something you want to look at passing to that operation to come to a better determination of.
Great. Thank you.
So
Mr. Wayne?
could I follow up? I think that's a great point. I think Commissioner Greenwell is on point. I don't think, we have the ability to even do this if all the appraisals were free. We just don't have the capacity to do so. So I do agree with you. We're in an accelerated pace that we've never seen before, and I think it'd be more than prudent to put a percentage. I'm just trying to understand the process as we're going through so we can have some comparisons, so so we could do some additional analytics. And I don't know if today has to be that meeting or through the process. We can certainly consider that amount. I'd like to do it from an analytical point of view, but I agree with your sentiment, Commissioner Greenwell.
If I can follow up, my concern is that I just feel like that a hard number is pretty tough for people for us as a board to do. I feel like if we would give a little bit of leeway, could go a long way. I think a lot of the homes are still going to have to be torn down and brought up to code, but there might be a few that sneak through that are just borderline. And I just feel that would be reasonable to do.
But, Mr. Chair, I certainly appreciate that and have been speaking daily to constituents from all over the county who are trying to understand this process, ask my opinion, first our role in it, and then my opinion about how to proceed. And I try to encourage everyone to think through the whole picture. I mean, obviously each one of us cares personally and deeply about our residents and the best interest for ourselves, but there is a purpose to this policy, and every one of us as taxpayers are on the hook for the exposure that the FEMA flood program has. So the goal is to ultimately reduce that risk to all of us collectively as well. So balancing those two tests, having been a legislator for 8 years, been in your kind of position, I understand the challenge. You're trying to balance all the questions, but I trust that you all will do the work that entailed to get that done.
Thank you. Great. Mr. Sandelli?
First of all, to Mr. Loveland and his team, thank you very much. When in the midst of what we're doing now, expediency and urgency, I think is a key word for all of us. So I encourage that. I hope we continue to look at the process itself. But as our commissioner said, but there's a process here, and I hope that we step back just a little bit to make sure that the process is aligned and gives us the best bottom line results within the context of being urgency and expediency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great comments, Commissioner Sandelli. So real quickly, based on everything that I'm hearing from everybody here, wanted to ask just a couple questions to staff to see if they are aware. Thanks, Mr. Property Appraiser, too. Are you aware of any of the 6 municipalities adding a multiplier? I think I heard Fort Myers Beach has already added a multiplier. Any idea what those look like across the spectrum?
Yes, sir, I do have some information. The other jurisdictions have been making a percentage adjustment, but that was prior to the new information that was coming from the property appraiser's office in terms of the just value. No, I can't find it.
Commissioners, if I can, while Dave is looking for that information, I will share with you that we've had conversations with the other municipalities in regards to the 50% rule and some of the things that they plan to bring to their councils to change. We have some consistency with at least a couple at this point, pretty much watching what we're making for decisions, and will follow suit is what they've shared. So we're trying to get to a level of consistency throughout the county for not only our residents' advantage, but also contractors who might work in multiple jurisdictions and understand that the policy is going to be applied pretty uniformly as much as we can. But I think you are correct. Fort Myers Beach did indicate they were putting a multiplier on that number. We haven't had any conversations with them as to why they made that decision, but certainly we'll make that attempt.
Okay. So based on those comments, and thank you very much for that answer, I hear exactly what the board's talking about when we talk about expediency and urgency, and even the concern about whether the private appraisers would have the capacity to provide that many numbers that fast for people to get their repairs underway. So I do think it's appropriate to look at the idea of a multiplier, especially knowing that some of the other cities are doing that as well. I would love to see everybody adopt a consistent approach across the county because it would just help everybody as they're working across city lines. I think the suggestion to have a group review this, an advisory committee review this and give us some thoughts on it is a good one. And in the motion today, we are going to send this to the LPA. So I think my thoughts are, I would make the motion for approval of the proposal today and add to that they review a multiplier that could be assessed to the market value of properties, and And I think we get that number based on maybe talking to the other municipalities to see what they're considering as well. And then that way our advisory committee, the LPA, can look at that and weigh those considerations. And then it comes back to us for final adoption after the LPA's had a chance to weigh in their thoughts. So that would be my motion and my thought for today.
Chairman, if I may follow up on that. One of my concerns about doing that would be that I feel like it needs to be answered now. My concern about people are wanting to start rebuilding now, and I think holding that up would be a mistake. So I would like to see us make a decision today. I know it seems rushed, but I feel like we should be able to make a decision today. I know there's a lot of people that are living in homes that are gutted and not put back together. So I feel like the quicker we can make a decision, it's better for our community.
Any other comments?
I guess I'd ask you a question, Commissioner Greenwell. I mean, you're obviously in the industry. Your family's been in the industry for a long time. We've never seen the precedent that we've seen lately in rising costs. So tonight, I agree with Commissioner Hammond. I agree with your points. I understand the process we go through. Do you have a thought, a recommendation, a suggestion?
I do have a thought. I just feel like if we put 5% on it, just to move it up enough where the people that are on borderline, they're going to realize that we did give them a little relief, but if they're over, they're over. And they're going to be able to start, work right away. I think that's important. I would make a motion to add 5% on it as a little bit of relief and move it forward.
So we already have a motion on the floor, and we haven't had a second of that yet. So we have to get that motion first.
If we could deal with the motion on the floor, I'm just curious at some additional questions. So can we talk about the timeline that it would take to go through the committees, and when would it actually be back here?
November 15th.
Yes, the plan was to bring it back to you November 15th with the committee review on November 7th.
If I may, could we get a second for discussion, and then I'd love to continue.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the second from Commissioner Ruane. All right, so just for the process real quick, one of the first things I asked when I got in my briefing was, can we just make the decision at this meeting because people are waiting? And I think you're 100% dead on with the pulse of your constituents. They want to know right now, what can I do to get my home fixed as soon as possible? What I was told, and I'd ask staff or our county attorney to verify, we need to send it through at least the local planning agency. Is that correct? Is that your opinion, Mr. County Attorney?
Mr. Chairman, that would be our recommendation, that the item be assigned for study by the LPA. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when are we looking to schedule that LPA meeting?
It is scheduled now for November 7th, Monday.
Monday, okay. Do we want to, in an effort to expedite the process, have a special county commission meeting to then adopt once we've received the LPA's recommendation? That would speed up the process. I'm always available to do that if the board is up for that.
Is that your motion?
I'll amend my motion if there's a second for that.
Second that.
Okay.
So, Richard, do you want to comment on that as far as advertising goes?
Mr. Chairman, if the board would declare that that special meeting is due to the emergency response to the hurricane, our office would be satisfied with the advertising request.
So we could do it under that for advertising reasons?
Yes, sir.
So,
And that definitely is in my motion, that it's due to the hurricane, absolutely.
does your motion include a date for that special board meeting after the 7th?
Yeah, it would be after the 7th. I'll let the county administration, any recommendation, would you do it the 8th, or do you need an extra day? Oh, yeah, election day, a Tuesday. We typically meet on Tuesdays anyways. Would you want to just do it Tuesday at 9:30, the 8th?
Commissioner, we can do it at your pleasure.
Okay.
I mean, it's just one item on the agenda.
Yep.
So
Yep, it would be quick.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Okay, so just to clearly state the motion, we're approving as presented today with the addition that the local planning agency review a multiplier that could be, 5%, could be as high as 15%. How about that? Because I'm interested actually in more like the 15% line. And that we will have a special meeting on November 8th at 9:30 to review the item again, to vote on the item again then.
Under the hurricane. And
Under the, because of the hurricane, right, under the local emergency.
second that.
We have a motion, a second.
I'll second.
We already have a second. Any other discussions? Any public comment on this new motion? Sir? Come on up, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to shine a little light on Dan Allers, Councilman, Fort Myers Beach. You had made a comment about the town had did the 20%. At our last meeting, we had given our staff direction that we wanted to follow suit with what the county did, and at the time you hadn't made a decision as to what exactly you were going to do, and it sounds like you're moving that way. But in our code, it currently calls for that additional 20% above that building value. So that's what we had given staff, so that's what has kind of been out there. I will certainly make a recommendation that we pay attention to what you're doing, because I feel it's very important that the municipalities stay in line with the county for FEMA circumstances like Mr. Caldwell had mentioned. So we'll be watching. I'll make that recommendation at our meeting later today, but thank you for taking this up so expeditiously. That's very well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Richard?
Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, Richard Durling. Just so you know, for the record, Lee County is, of course, 0 right now. City of Fort Myers is 30%. I would argue that 5 or 15% is not going to be sufficient. We need to look at a minimum of 30% so we can mirror what's going on in the city of Fort Myers and other municipalities in the Southwest Florida area. I'd encourage you to even consider possibly pushing the envelope and going for more based on the fact that over the last 2 years, we've had as much as a 40% increase in construction, and it's going up. It's not going to go down. So it's going to be a struggle for people to meet that 50% threshold if the number isn't significant enough. So at least 30%, possibly even more. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll come back aboard. We have a motion and a second. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, item number 3 is something that you will continue to see as part of the county's response to Hurricane Ian, and that is a periodic request for the Board of County Commissioners to ratify and confirm certain orders that have been executed by either yourself or the county manager. Today, we respectfully request the board confirm and ratify resolutions 22-10-17, -19, and -20. 17 was the reestablishment of the curfew for Captiva Island so that it is consistent with the city of Sanibel. 19 is the 4th extension of the state of local emergency, and number 20 is the 5th extension of the state of local emergency. We would respectfully request approval of all 3.
Great, thank you.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. We have a second by Commissioner Wayne. Any public comment on item number 3? Back to the board. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Public hearings.
Commissioners, David Halverson, County Attorney's Office. I have your first public hearing this morning. This item has been duly advertised, and I provided the affidavit of publication of the clerk. Item number 1 is a petition to vacate the public's interest in the unimproved public utility and drainage easement centered along the common property lot line, lying between lots 18 and 19 of the platted lots at 210 Magellan Street in Fort Myers. There were no objections to the requested vacation, and staff is available for any questions.
Great. Any questions for staff? Okay. Any public comment? Public hearing number 1. Come back to the board for a motion.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hammond, second by Commissioner Sandelli. Any objection? Motion carries. Number 2. Good morning, Joe.
Morning, Commissioners. Joe Adams with the County Attorney's Office. This hearing has been properly advertised and have the affidavit of publication for your clerk. This is an ordinance creating year-round manatee slow speed zones for the quarter-mile bayside of Captiva Island, Safety Harbor of North Captiva, and the Boca Grande Bayou. Based on the best available data in conjunction with our review with FWC, manatees inhabit these areas all year, and there's a need to post these as year-round slow speed zones. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Any questions for staff? Okay. Any public comment on public hearing number 2? Come back to the board for a motion.
I'll move the item, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion, Commissioner Rain, second, Commissioner Hammond. Any other discussion? Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Item number 3. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amanda Swindle with the County Attorney's Office. I have your third public hearing this morning, and it has been legally advertised. This is a hearing to adopt amendments to the Land Development Code regarding the seasonal farmers markets. The upshot of this amendment is that they will no longer be seasonal. It will be a year-round allowable use. And there are a couple of other additional regulations associated with that. Staff is available if you have any questions.
Any questions for staff? No? Any public comment on item number 3? You know, close public comment, come back to the board for a motion.
I'll move the item, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wayne, motion.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Greenwell. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you. We have no walk-on carry-on items. Commissioner items. Commissioner Greenwell, do you have a commissioner item? Not appointments, but item. No, okay.
No, I didn't.
Commissioner Hammond, you have 2, don't you?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the first one, I actually got that update during my briefing, so I think they're working on that change to the administrative code, and we'll bring it back at one of the December meetings. The second update is, so we received a letter and a plan from the group who is leasing the Waterway Estates Marina from us. They're Safe Harbor Marinas. As you guys know, right now, there is a tremendous amount of boats that are in the waterways, in our marinas, and even in the mangroves that need to be removed and repaired, and then quickly, I guess, gotten back to the water. So there is a need for what's called a boat triage facility. And many of the facilities that would do this type of work were actually damaged during the hurricane. Because we do have this marina piece of land that was going to be the Waterway Estates Marina, already available and under lease. The group who's working there has started the work to take in some of these boats and make some repairs to these boats, get them seaworthy again, and get them back on their way. And that group has come today to speak. And so at this point, I'd like to let Mr. Clark, who's with Safe Harbor Marinas, come and say any words that he, Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge, invite him to the podium and let him talk to us about what he would like to propose to the board.
Okay. And his name again?
His name is Peter Clark, and he's the Chief Development Officer for Safe Harbor Marinas.
And we have 2 comment cards also on the same item.
Excellent.
Morning, sir. Just state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Peter Clark, Chief Development Officer with Safe Harbor Marinas. Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. Very briefly, we've all identified the need that Commissioner Hammond mentioned, that there are a number of boats. The number is quite countless. I think it's in the thousands of boats that are littering our shorelines, littering our environment, and kind of preventing us from getting back to normal in terms of recreational boating. The facility at Waterway Estates we see as very much of an asset to the county, and as well as being managed by Safe Harbor Marinas, which, back up for a moment, we are the largest marina operator and owner in the country. We have over 140 facilities, namely in Lee County. We have Cape Harbor, Burnt Store, and Pineland. The facility at Waterway Estates, we're looking for a temporary use to store and triage boats, because getting them off the shoreline, getting them out of docks that are in current disrepair is very important to get back to normal, not only for our marinas, but for our residents as well. The facility would be managed and operated by a professional staff of boatyard folks, but I want to be very clear that this would not be a boatyard per se, no heavy work in terms of grinding, painting, demolition. This is merely boats that have been determined to have salvage value. In other words, would be returned to the water, would come here for a period of time where they would then be triaged and put back into the water, ideally in a 2 to 3 month turn time. The facility obviously has inherent value in terms of its access to the water. We have a channel direct access to the Caloosahatchee River with water depths of less than 5 to 6 feet of water depth. We have the perimeter side tie area that does allow for in-water storage, and it also, pre-existing boatyard on the premises had a travel lift well, and we have positioned equipment to be able to manage those type of vessels up to 45 to 50 feet in length. I would be happy to take some more questions. I know I only have a minute left, if that's possible.
We don't ask questions during public comment, but
So-
Commissioner Hammond's.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Mr. Clark. And yeah, if we have some more questions, we might call you back up. But basically, I see him as the applicant applying to do something different with a piece of property here. Now, basically, Commissioners, how this is going to work in my conversations with Mr. Clark is, so for the next 18 months, they're going to make every effort to go through the development process to build the marina that they are under contract to build with us out there, which I'm excited about. But during that 18-month period, they're going to answer the call here and begin triaging these boats, helping us get some of these boats out of the mangroves, out of the marinas, out of the waterways, and getting them repaired. This is, he's committed to me not going to be a boat wrecking graveyard, which is absolutely something that I don't want there too. We don't want to see boats being brought in just for the sole purpose of being destroyed, not on this piece of property anyways. And so, in speaking with our staff, Mr. DeJolet, maybe you guys can opine, there are some changes that need to be made in order to bring this into conformance with the code. And so what are those changes that you all need to see made, and what direction are you looking for today?
Mr. Chair?
Roger.
Thank you. Mr. Salyer, please.
Commissioners, if the board wants to pursue this option, we would need direction to, first and foremost, amend the lease. The current lease does not allow for this use. And secondly, we need to work with the county attorney's office for an emergency use authorization for a hurricane response that would allow this type of activity to take place given the land use that's currently in place for the property.
Very good. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be my motion, would be to direct staff to begin to prepare the amendment to the lease as Glenn has outlined and the emergency use authorization for this activity to take place in order for us to respond to, Hurricane Ian and the devastation that it brought to the boating community.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Glenn, for example, what you just said, we're going to change the lease and the use of the property. This sounds familiar like in the last month, a lot of people in the community stepped up and tried to do the right thing. We had this issue with a mining pit, for example, that wanted to store vehicles and RVs at them basically on dirt, but due to their use was not permitted, they could not make that change. Is this pretty much what we're going to do here so we can maybe adapt to other properties within the county too for compatibility? Or is this more of a zoning issue on those other properties?
Yes, sir. I think I would characterize some of the incompatibility with other property as being environmental in nature, but where you have a land use impediment to this kind of operation, we could look at emergency use authorizations to enable this sort of activity.
And the change in the lease, is there any cost to Lee County to do that as far as the change in the lease with the current company?
No, sir. What we would propose, what we would recommend to the board is not only no cost to the county, but quite honestly, this will be a revenue accruing activity. So we need to amend the lease that appropriately reflects the fact that Safe Harbor would be turning a profit on this operation.
And that would be the county attorney, I think, was trying to get my attention for that part, correct?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman,
Richard, you
if
good?
I might.
Yes.
We see this largely dependent upon a lease amendment to be negotiated and be brought back before the Board of County Commissioners. And I think that is the direction staff is looking for today, is to authorize those types of negotiations to take place between your staff and the marina representatives.
And that's what I'm asking for too, Mr. Chairman, not for passage today, but for the negotiation of the amendment to take place.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second, Commissioner Wayne. And we have a couple of public comment cards on this. We have first Bob McCormick and Dan Hamilton. Would you like to speak on this? Are you Dan or Bob?
I'm Dan.
Okay, just go ahead and get 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, so hey, I just wanted to give our 2 cents on it. I mean, we live in Waterway Estates, and we're right down the street from the marina. We're very pleased to see that project going on, and we are more pleased to see that they're going to step up and help with all the damaged boats, because I have a few myself, and we see them all out there. I'm a yacht broker on top of it, so anything we can do to enhance the boating community, I think is a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
I agree with Dan 100%. It's right in our backyard, but an emergency is an emergency, and we're all here to help each other. So I'm all for it. That's all I can tell you. I have nothing. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Okay, I'm 100% for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion from the board? Mr. Sendelli?
I think we all know the value of the boating community in a lot of different ways, personally, professionally. And so congratulations on moving this forward. Just out of curiosity, we seem to be dealing in a different scale. Do we have any idea of the amount of vessels that are out there right now that could benefit from this program? Can anybody answer that? Or somebody can get back to me. I was just kind of curious. I mean, we've seen it by air. We've been out on the water. And they seem like they're everywhere. So if somebody's got a number someplace, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, Commissioner Sandelli, we can certainly share with you the range of estimates for derelict vessels across the county. It is a range, but I believe 239 is the maximum number of boats that would go on this particular parcel.
Okay. Gives me something to frame this whole thing with. Thank you.
Just a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, please.
Yes.
So I know the governor came up with a pretty broad initiative relative to some state missions, and he included, obviously, marine vessels. I know there's an initiative going down at Fort Myers Beach currently in the same, situation. So I don't know how this complements what is taking place, but it's certainly an initiative when you go through the county, and I would say that Fort Myers Beach probably is an overwhelming amount of vessels that they're down there as it is. They're working very closely with the governor's office. Been on the phone as recently as yesterday with Kevin Guthrie. So I'd love staff to just bring this in with the state mission and potentially how this may be, because it ultimately may be an adjustment, but also probably could be something that could be a state mission and a FEMA mission. It's something we should explore.
Very good.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussions? No, we have a motion, a second. Any objection? No objection, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my items.
You didn't have the second one, you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I didn't put it on the agenda, it's real brief. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I thought this was going to be on my last meeting, full meeting as a chairman today, but thanks for having another meeting on next week. But I just want to thank my colleagues, everything for your leadership throughout the year, and county management and all the team and all the employees. What a year. I never thought a year ago, we started the year off with COVID, I would lose a colleague, got a new colleague, and now we're in with the hurricane. So what a year. I thought 12 and 13 was a bad year. It was really a bad place for the county then, but this year it's another topper. So thank you for all the staff and everything. I really enjoyed it. We've got a great wingman here, my vice chairman. He is ready. He's been a great asset to Lee County the last few years. And say Commissioner Sendelli has been a great vice chairman. So thank you again. Congratulations, Commissioner Greenwell. It's great working with you, and I hope we have a good year next year. So thank you. Commissioner Sendelli, do you have a commissioner item? No. Okay, Commissioner Rain.
I do.
Okay.
Can staff bring the item up, please, on the overhead? The attachments.
Do you have a presentation, Commissioner Wayne, or?
So you all had attachments in the recap. I just thought it would be really helpful if it was just up on the screen.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we all can see it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
We'll have that information up on the screen in just a minute or so. In the meantime, would you like a quick update on under county manager items?
Okay. You have 5 today, so if you like to, you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I gladly, just trying to, I think a pitch is worth 1,000 words. So, I'd like to just everyone see, so there's no misunderstanding on this particular item.
We can go to Rogers and come back when they get it ready.
Great.
Roger, you want to do the first one, debris collection
Thank you, Mr.
update?
Chair. Commissioner, we do have a few items here, two of which we're going to ask you to take a vote on. But let's begin with the debris collection update. Glenn?
Commissioners, we are very pleased to tell you that the county continues to ramp up its debris collection efforts. We're very sensitive to the fact always that if you have debris sitting in front of your house, that it's never fast enough, and we do understand that. But that said, we do continue to set new benchmarks in the industry. For instance, when we had our workshop last Wednesday, we were collecting at an average daily pace of 75,000 cubic yards. We have, in short order, moved that to 85,000 cubic yards, and I'm very pleased to tell you that on Sunday, Crowder Gulf collected 99,676 cubic yards in a single day. And what that means to residents is that by Thursday, we probably will eclipse the 2 million cubic yard mark for collection. And that is more than we collected in all of Hurricane Irma, and it will be in a quarter of the time that took. So, we're looking very strong in that regard. On Friday, we did get FEMA and FDEM guidance to pick up commercial debris. So what that means is we will now be able to double back in areas where we've already done a first pass collection, but we had to skip commercial debris. And you'll recall that commercial can mean a lot more than just businesses. It can mean multifamily, it can mean trailer parks, all of those things. And so now we have approval to go back and start working on those areas. So that is big as well. I do want to tell you that with respect to the outer islands, so North Captiva in particular, the county will be issuing a solicitation for barge services to help us remove that material from the island. We're doing this so that we can justify all of the costs for FEMA reimbursement, but we're also taking the time to do it properly and appropriately, and it allows the Upper Captiva residents time to come in and move their material to the curb. In working with the fire district there and making our own assessments, it looks like about half of the homeowners have had an opportunity to do that thus far. So we need more time on Upper Captiva for the remainder of the residents to get in there, get their material to the curb. So while we solicit for these services, they can have time to make that happen. I think for now, Roger, that's the update, unless there's any questions for us.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Glenn, commissioners have any questions on debris removal?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. Have you guys made any plans to open any more sites or bring any extra trucks in?
Yes, sir. So we continue to open new DMS sites. A couple are underway right now that Crowder Gulf is working on as we speak. And as we open new sites, they can bring in additional trucks. and actually an item that we'll talk about later, which is final disposal options. That is the primary constraint right now. And in order to bring even more trucks than already are here today, we need to talk about final disposal options.
Okay. How many sites do we have?
Doug, I think we're at 9.
Commissioners, we have 10 sites open right now. We're working one on Lee Boulevard and also another one on Pine Island and Littleton, which you asked us about yesterday.
So, okay, good. So we are actively looking to open more sites then and get even more trucks in here. I mean, I think that's, you know, if we've got to get it in this deadline, we want to have as many people working on it as possible. That just only seems common sense, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Yep, thanks, guys. Thanks for the answer.
Is that the update? Is that the update for the,
Yeah, for debris collection, yes, sir.
thank you. Mr. Wayne, was your item ready now?
You ready to go?
Pamela just came out of this, so maybe it's working now.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, with your permission, we'll just keep going. until the item comes up. Thank you. Second item is we have an interlocal agreement with the Florida Department of Emergency Management and the City of Sanibel. And Glenn, will you please explain the interlocal?
Yes, sir. The City of Sanibel has requested the Division of Emergency Management to assume responsibility for debris collection exactly as they did for the town of Fort Myers Beach. So what that means is the division would contract directly with Crowder Golf for the collection and Thompson Consulting for the monitoring. They're going to assume the financial responsibility therefore. They like to run that, of course, through the county, and so this interlocal agreement simply memorializes the arrangement where the division will take responsibility for those efforts. They've asked the county to collaborate where needed, but the county has no financial or legal responsibility for the collection of debris in Sanibel.
And you need us to vote to agree to that interlocal agreement, correct?
Yes, sir. We would like the interlocal agreement memorializing this to be
Okay,
adopted.
we need a motion to accept the interlocal agreement.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any public comment on the interlocal agreement with the state of Florida and Sanibel? No public comment. We'll come back to the board. Any other discussion? Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we ready? Yep. Commissioner, your item is up.
Great, appreciate it.
Commissioner Wayne, you're up.
Thank you. So today I wanted to bring to your attention, obviously, I think it's in everyone's best interest, and I don't think there's going to be a disagreement that we need to obviously come up with a long-term recovery task force. And how we go about that is, one, we were all blessed with Bay County having an actual plan that they put forward, a team they put together. And the task force they put together was elected bodies. And this task force is no different than being a chair of the MPO or the TDC. Basically comprises of each city having a seat. It's a county commissioner having a seat. It's someone from the delegation, hospital board, fire, law enforcement, and constitutionals. And basically, as I read from their plan, it's to complement an immediate response and recover. The long-term recovery task force was established to build broad, ambitious, and yet achievable blueprints from the future of Bay communities. The task force is comprised of those people. And it basically talks about 6 branches, if you will, starting with housing, going with infrastructure, natural cultural resources, health, social sciences, economic recovery, and planning and capacity. And then the 2 brown areas are policy, oversight, and funding resources. Those are set for us as commissioners to make the policy decisions, because the way they do this is have a board and then have branches. So for example, on the economic recovery, you might have the real estate people as a branch. You might have the chambers as a branch, economic development as a branch. They're all going to collaborate and talk, basically what they're going to do. And the task force is going to build an agenda to talk about no different, what I would say, the executive committee for the MPO, and then come back to this board to ratify and obviously go through that process. What I liked about this plan It's tried and true. About 30 days into the storm, there was a plan given to me last Thursday for Lee County Disaster Recovery Plan. And it's a great plan in theory. Bay County is actually in practice and worked. We've talked to the Bay County Commissioners. We've spent a great deal of time with it. Their document is rather comprehensive. And you know what I like to look at in their plan, what I think is overly important, is not only the makeup of the board, not only the different branches as they have, but their achievements in a community that had over $7 billion worth of an impact and receiving over $2.1 billion from the state. I look at our roles as someone that's going to make policy decisions and obviously allocate appropriate funding. It's really what we do in a nutshell. It's going to require working together in an effort that we've never seen before. Additionally, when I look at the Bay County plan, did 25 public meetings, over 350 hours of public input in all the branches. They had over 750 participants. This is to rebuild and recover in our community. To me, it is clear, in having been at some graduate classes, there's a theoretical approach, which was given to me last Thursday, 30 days into the storm, and there's an actual approach, one that's here. And I think it's really clear forward that every step of the way, as the Bay County Commissioners had indicated, they built the task force. From nominating a chair to going with, we're going to have X number of people on it, and bringing back every single solitary decision to this group for us to ratify. As simply as it put, I think we can build this plan using Bay County, understanding some of the mistakes they made, culling through the Lee County Disaster Recovery Plan, utilizing ideas from that, and continue to build upon this. The main difference I see this is that I think staff has an awful lot to do and will continue to have an awful lot to do, even more so. And the Bay County plan uses a group of people, branches, and continues to make the decisions so we move forward with the recovery. I've spent a lot of time with the plan. I'm very passionate about the plan. It's one that's actually been executed. So when I took a graduate class, it's one thing that you learn in graduate school. It's another thing that you actually witness and see. And with that in mind, I certainly wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, and I'm certainly going to look forward to seeking the opportunity to chair this committee. That's my presentation.
Well, thank you. And it's unfortunate you didn't get our Lee County plan until a few days ago, because I had that already, because we approved that back in December of 2021. We paid the Haggerty Group $125,000 for that plan, but I understand we have not used it because luckily we have not had to deal with a hurricane. So, and I met with you and the other commissioners, Bay County, and they went through this 5 years ago. So it's we both learned a lot that day, talking to the commissioners and everything. And I like both plans personally. The Bay County, what I saw with the Bay County being such a rural county of 179,000 people, they were dealing with crosswalks, repaving, dirt roads, firehouses that we don't have that issue because our fire districts are under the state districts and school boards. I loved the thought of we all sit down working together. So that was just going to be a challenge and we need to do this, but we need to sit down, but trying to get school board and different elected officials to different cities and the county together to consolidate some of these issues we have to deal with over the next 4 or 5 years. That's going to be the challenge because, you look at Bay County and some of the things they dealt with, crosswalks. Well, that's part of our LEAD plan, adopted roads in 2010. We adopted that complete streets as part of our funding. Community centers, increased communication, fiber optics. I mean, some things would not relate to our issue, but again, electric car charging stations, they didn't have those then. Now they're looking at, they were looking at doing those things we already have since we're more of a advanced technology county, the things they dealt with. That's probably why ours doesn't really adapt to them when you try to put them together. So we've got to find the happy medium. How do we put the task force together and how we structure it is really important though.
Yeah. May I, Mr. Chairman, make a few comments? So I think at the outset, the one thing that I'll recognize that obviously doesn't even need to be said, you could call me Captain Obvious, is this will be the single most important thing that any of the 5 of us do as a Lee County Commissioner. This helping to be the representatives of the people in Lee County through this process of rebuilding our county, I think will be the single most important thing we ever do during our time in office. This is a big deal. This is not something that I want to do without public input. And I think what I see here in the idea of a long-term recovery task force is it creates a very valuable tool where we can hear from vast parts of our constituency, specifically directed at topics that are very important to our community. And then ultimately the board gets to be the policy and oversight and the funding oversight as well for what this advisory committee has recommended to us. And so I actually don't see the Lee County plan or the Bay County plan at odds with each other. I think they're actually they're both really good. They're both based off of the same thing, the FEMA National Disaster Recovery Framework. I mean, it's not like this is some brand new, thought. They actually both agree with each other. If I had anything that I'd like to see changed about the Lee County plan, it is that when you look at the org chart right away, it appears to be very driven by administration and staff, which I have the most respect for. Not saying this to be disrespectful, but this is the community's rebuilding. And so I see this as a tool, the Long-Term Recovery Task Force, as a tool that could be used no matter which framework we use, whether we use the Bay County framework or the Lee County framework. I think and just think about, maybe let me give you some practical examples of how this would work. When you talk about housing, well, think about how many groups have come today just to talk to us about housing. This would create a forum for those groups to get in a room and discuss just specifically housing for that meeting length of time, and then to provide some recommendations back that we can ultimately make some policy decisions on. When you look at economic recovery, I happen to know that there are 18 chambers of commerce in Lee County. That's a lot of them, plus the Horizon Council. And we have an economic development office. Fort Myers has an economic development office. Cape Coral does too. Get all those folks in a room using this task force framework to talk, to make recommendations back to the big policy board. I do see I see this as a vehicle where we could have easily gotten into a room with representatives from the county and all the cities to talk about, is there a multiplier adjustment that's needed for the 50% rule? And should it be 30 like Fort Myers is doing, 20 like Fort Myers Beach is doing, or 15 like we may have suggested? You can get those things worked out on the task force and then brought back up to the board to then approve or deny or amend as we see fit. So that's what I liked about it. I didn't really see the two at odds with each other, but I did think that a long-term recovery task force would be a very valuable tool.
So what I was remiss in saying, certainly, and I think you did a great job, Commissioner Hammond, it's a task force. It's an approach that we're going to utilize. It's having our community engaged, because this is going to be as much as a public input, a public investment as a governmental investment. We're going to look to that community. It's one that's actually been here and tried. And I look at really the task force. I think there's elements from every plan, as well as no different than Joplin, Missouri, that went through tornadoes. So there's things that we're going to continue to learn and do, but the task force is much more engaged. I think staff is going to be overwhelmed with the amount of responsibilities they're going to have. And I'd like to continue to stay focused on what we need to and recover, and look to the public and look to the private investment community to come in and do that. And that's where I see the big difference between the two. Again, I don't see it having any more authority than you would have running the TDC, you being in charge of FAC. You come here, you bring back all the issues, you bring back all the policy decisions, you bring back all the necessary funding. What we're going to have to do collectively is we're going to be on the road, going to Tallahassee, going to Washington, and making sure we do the best we can in funding. There's no comparison between a Bay County and a Lee County because we're so much bigger. But most people would indicate that it'll pay 20 to 25% quicker because of the economic impact. And to your point, Commissioner Hammond, there's so many different branches out there that can aid into what you would say to be economic recovery, what you can do. And again, I just think the tasks are going to continue to come. Permits. I'm concerned just about, how do we do that? How do we issue permits? How do we actually expedite them? How do we do the inspections? And I'd like us to have staff continue to concentrate on how we look to those remedies, how we look to Bay County, because again, it's tried and true through the process. That's what I like so much about it. It separates and bifurcates. The task force is just a means of trying to come up with the best alternative that we move forward. That's all the task force is. I like the public being engaged to the degree they are, and I like the fact that we're going to augment and complement staff and not overburden staff.
Did you want to say something?
Commissioner, thank you for all the work you've done, and to everybody for all the work that's been done to date. I break things down a certain way in my own head, and I think the first thing is I look at this challenge that we have in front of us. The first is the near term, and I congratulate everybody that's gone out, rolled up their sleeves in every level to make things normal again. We've only been involved 32 days or something since this came, something like that, which is pretty remarkable on every level. We've learned a lot from that process itself, you know, and I think is what we've learned from the process and what we've learned from the individuals who played a role in that, you know, that'll be the formation of the long-term plan. And I've had a chance to read through some of the Bay County stuff and some of ours, and I'm trying to put that together myself with people that I work with every day in the marketplace. And I think that's going to be, what do we want to look like? Where were we? You know, where are we today? What do we want to look like going forward? And I think that goes back to this being a process that is probably the most important thing we'll probably do. But I believe in our folks that'll lead us there. So I'm focused right now a little more on the near term because people are hurting right now, but I want to plan long-term that we're going to be comfortable with, you know, and so there's a couple pieces in here that I need to think about personally, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one thing we need to look at too, compared to the two, they're both good plans, and they both, one is obviously working. I remember talking to the one commissioner from Bay County, and he told me, looking back 4 or 5 years later, he says, I realized I was picked because I was an engineer. Looking back, you know, me being an elected person, I probably shouldn't have been there because I kind of got in the way of staff because staff was doing all the work. So you kind of look at that. I think we should be involved because we represent the community and people are going to come to us when there's a problem, as you hear today with the housing, for example. So they're going to be calling, you know, us when there's an issue with permits or if it's something else. So I understand, you know, his background was being an engineer, so he was a great asset for that. But you know, do we want to see this as, you know, how much do we want to be involved with the board? I mean, you can compare to other groups like TDC, which is set up by the state because it's a funding mechanism, but you can, this is kind of like an MPO. We all sit in the MPO, for example, because we all make decisions collectively the county with the city councils based upon the population. They have a seat, or do you just want to have one and it comes back to us and it's policy driven then and funding sources from the county. So you got which way you want to see. Do you want to see all 5 of us involved or just have one selective person involved to oversee the committee?
One additional thing is I think as we found out to date, this is not just about Lee County. This is from the federal government, the state government, you know, down to the local government. And what did we learn from that? How do we access up the relationships that we built through that? What can they bring to the table to integrate this whole process? That's part of the process as well.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
I look at this as offering up another layer of community relations and input that we can utilize to build back. I mean, I don't see a conflict here. I see everything still has to come back to the board for approval. I think staff has done an absolute wonderful job with the Emergency Operations Center. I was very impressed to see the operation there. I just think this does offer us an opportunity to form a task force that can take some of the burden off of them. Obviously the task force and staff will have to work closely together, but the task force could also perform some duties that would relieve them of so much burden, I think. So I have to be honest, I think it adds a layer, and I think it adds a positive layer to what we could do.
One more comment, Mr. Chairman. May?
Yes.
So I look at the task force concept as one that you look at the branches, and each one of us have a particular role that you're all going to play. So it's building in capacity. Commissioner Greenwell, you're on that branch. Be sure bringing your expertise to that particular situation. Economic development, Ray, you know, you're certainly there. You know, trying to do what we do as best we can. So the branches are going to be really important. We're talking about, you know, the number of meetings they had. We're talking about 25 different public meetings that this group had, and then the branches. You're talking over 750 participants. Everyone's going to want to help. So I don't want to pick a plan. A concept is the task force. That's what I'm looking for. And the concept is the task force, and that's really what I was trying to do. We'll build this from the moment we go from here forward. But I'm just trying to build this in a way, and I'm looking at a task force to be the best vehicle, as opposed to, I think this plan's great, I think this plan's great, and we're going to even have a better plan, because we also have firsthand experience. But it's a task force concept that I'm really talking about today.
My only question to staff is it possibly, we all have seen these committees come, and we try to get rid of committees before RPC, for example, and once they create these government committees and the bureaucracy, it's hard to get rid of it. So do we look, in the past, we're looking at a timeline, how long the committee would last for, 2, 3, 4 years, and also the total cost as we look and review the meetings, how much staff-driven time is this going to be? A lot of it's going to be after hours. So if you can in the future, as an estimate in the future, I'd like to see the total costs this is going to comprise of, all the staff time and hours and administrative time. It's going to be called from Richard's office and your office, because some of these issues will be conflicting, for example, with zoning, land use issues and stuff like that. So it's going to be, the HECS will be involved, probably the county attorney's office will be involved with compatibility issues, where it may go with the discussion to make sure it stays within the parameters of being legal and sufficient. So it's like to see the future costs of that in the future. So while we have to do something, we need to sit down and work together as a community, and this is a great opportunity to do that. I'd just like to know what the total cost is going to be.
Mr. Chairman, if you will, I'm going to make a motion that I actually chair the Long-Term Recovery Task Force. That's my motion.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your time that you put into this. I appreciate the vision that you've laid out for it. And I do think having this advisory committee, this task force, is an important one.
Do we have a timeline for that? Like, how much, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or?
I think we're going to build that as we go. The task force is going to be as long as it takes us to rebuild this community. And it could be that one of us will come off it, one of us won't. But every year we have the opportunity to look at this. I just think it's essential to give people the opportunity to rebuild, the people to have recovery and look forward to that. We need to move forward and work on 2 parallel paths. That's what I was looking for in this. We could come up with members in every decision that we'll make sure this will be a recurring item on our agenda. We could have a workshop and multiple workshops as we lay down the foundation. But the task force concept is something I'm just really passionate about.
And would the chairmanship rotate as we currently do on our administrative code now, as we do the chair?
Haven't even gotten in that particular situation. What Bay County did was Mr. Carroll was there for 2 years to do some type of consistency, but that's our call. That's what we need to do. It's not necessarily, but what he did indicate is that one person has to do this as a chair and then have to take themselves out of the rotation to be the chairman of the BOCC, because there's just too much administration work to do both.
I know you mentioned in the workshop last week that you would take yourself out of the chairmanship. I hate to see you take that, that's why I was asking for 4 years, because that would be a rotation for you.
I don't know what we do at rotation here, because honestly, when I was appointed, we didn't necessarily go on rotation, so I don't know. I'm just trying to offer that. This is where my focus will be, and if it takes 2 years and you all still want me to continue to do that, and I'll continue to pass. This is, to me, an opportunity to rebuild this community, to give this community hope, and do the best we possibly can. I look forward to working with each and every one of you, because honestly, I think we all have amazing skill sets, and together as a team, we're going to give Lee County a much better place to live in for the future.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Yes. Yes, just state your name for the record.
Julie Dixon, and I'm from Matlacha, and I've been trying to correspond to a lot of people, and I've been getting a lot of good feedback. I appreciate everything you guys have done for us out there. This is the long-term solution, which is great, and thank you so much for stepping up and looking at this. So we were just trying to figure out what we could do we're kind of still in an emergency situation out there, and with your neighbor's seawall's down and yours is still up, then it takes theirs down, ours comes down with it. So we're really worried about high tides coming next month. We're not really looking down-term, like even next fall yet. So we really need someone helping us now as we're mitigating and how to build back these seawalls as a community. Punta Gorda Isles did it a few years ago, and they were able to get FEMA funding because their seawalls are protected by the county in an emergency, or they have like an IRS plan for that, I believe. And we don't have that, so I didn't know is that something we can retroact and do so we can get all the community seawalls back together as a unified force? Because right now, if we have one and the next guy doesn't have one, then they're all going out. And with high tide coming, we're all really worried what's going to happen. Be another disaster next month. There's already a plan, a joint unified local mitigation strategy for Lee County, and it seems like it's addressed there, but we need to know who our working group is because we don't have anybody to work with right now. And we're all kind of working by ourselves to build back. And that's fine, and we're good with that, but we think a strategy would help us all. And we feel like maybe if we don't really have till next fall, in a FEMA plan, we just need to know who we need to be working with to make a joint plan for our whole community. And it's also an evacuation route, so I was thinking maybe that would help us out a little more too. We're on Pine Island proper, the road, so all of our houses that are on there, we support the road as well, which is an evacuation route and have critical facilities there. So we just don't know who to talk to.
Well, perfect timing. We have now you have first topic for the task force, and then Pamela's in the back of the room here. She'll get your information. I'm sure Commissioner Wayne's office will be in contact with you. Great, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we come back. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. Any objections? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll get back on the recap here. Roger, you had debris mission. That was the next one.
I have a couple more items, Mr. Chair, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioners, next on our list is a conversation about reopening the Gulf Coast landfill for Hurricane Ian storm debris. Would like Glenn to start us on that conversation, please.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. As we discussed, the key factor at this point in increasing our already Herculean efforts on debris cleanup is final disposal. Doug Whitehead has a presentation that he is going to run through, and we'll try to answer any questions that you have afterwards.
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Whitehead, Lee County Solid Waste. The question right in front of you is we request permission to dispose of our own debris at the Waste Management Gulf Coast Landfill, which is located at the corner of Lee Boulevard and 82. Just the Gulf Coast Landfill has been closed for approximately 15 years. It is a double-line site, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it has capacity for our debris and debris only. Going back to our workshop last week, I think this is sort of the processes that we go through to get debris from the street to final disposal. It does look quite a bit like a pipeline where we have an inlet, we have a pump, and then we have the final outlet or reservoir. And that reservoir is the landfills which we are taking material to. That's the construction demolition material. The yard waste is being ground up and has beneficial reuse in other locations. Just in the notes, this is as of Sunday, we picked up approximately 1.7 million cubic yards. Over 28% of that is construction and demolition material. And just as an aside, nearly 98% of what we're picking up, what is being collected in Fort Myers Beach, is construction demolition material. So right now, as we point out, we have a lot more trucks on the road collecting material, about 30 more trucks. Glenn pointed out is that the amount we're collecting is increasing. That's going to the debris management site, that DMS that is mentioned up there. And that DMS is, as we pointed out earlier, we're adding 2 more to process the material, compact it, and move it out. Walking floor trailers, tractor trailers are a limiting factor, and we're working with our contractor to get more of them. And then we get to final disposal, which is an issue throughout Southwest Florida, as so many people ourselves, Charlotte County and Collier County, are searching for disposal. But for us, and just for us, we think that Gulf Coast Landfill is a good solution. It has right now 800,000 cubic yards permitted. That's quite a bit of material when you think of the compaction rate, which would be about 2 to 4 to 1 what we're picking up, what's coming inbound. The advantages of using Gulf Coast landfill, it is just much closer. You'll see in the succeeding slide, 33% quicker in moving that material. We're going to make better use of those tractor trailers. It lowered some of our costs. Our airspace at Lee Henry Landfill, which we will only use as a last resort, is about $18 million to develop that airspace. And extending haul-out duration could cost the county around $4 million. In other words, the longer we take, the less reimbursement we get from FEMA. So when we move quicker and safe, then we will get more reimbursement. We will use other disposal sites based upon location and speed, and to a lesser extent, price. But there are other disposal locations that we can use, including that SLD landfill in Charlotte County, which we talked about at our last meeting. It's just a really good overview of why Gulf Coast Landfill makes so much sense for us. It's much closer to areas like Page Field, our Southern Lee Health location moving along 75, and Waxahachie, which is really one of our bigger sites right now in terms of processing material. Mitigating operational impacts. Again, we will only take in storm debris. That is what this is for. This is not reopening the landfill for any other use except storm debris. Waste management will continue to tightly manage odor as they have in the past. We've been on the site. There's no detectable odor on there. And our analysis of gas production is that it's very, very, very low. Traffic will stay on the major roads and internal drives. The internal access is about a mile long, so we don't expect to see trucks queuing up and onto any public roads. They will construct view blocking berms, which we'll look at in a little bit, and the filling strategy, which we'll also look at, will limit the view from nearby neighborhoods. We will conduct disposal operations, accepting waste, during daylight hours only. The expected time frame of use is between 18 months and 24 months. And we will continue to work as hard as possible to limit that and move waste there as quickly as possible. So the amount of opening is as little as possible.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Okay.
You got another slide?
Yes, sir. Just shows the fill plan. We'll move away from the neighborhoods, both to the west and the south. Also, it shows how long the road is, the access road is, coming off of State Road 82. So there's plenty of trucks will not be backing up on the State Road 82. That's our view to the southeast towards Gateway. Note that there's 2 layers of trees that block the view, and while you can see a lot of those red roofs from the street, you really can't see the landfill as we've been through it. In addition, at that location where you see that small pile of sand, a blocking berm for viewscape will be placed to reduce the impact, the view impact for the neighbors. Same look to the west towards Pelican Preserve. We will be conducting neighborhood meetings. That'll be located, the first one will be today from 4 to 6 p.m. at Gateway Services offices. We'll be there with Waste Management also will be there, and we will have further ones. We'll decide on locations dependent upon what our expected participation is from the public, both this coming Thursday and then the following, a week from this Thursday.
Any questions for staff? No. Do you have anything else, Doug?
No, sir.
Okay. So they'll have the meeting tonight for this action today from 4 to 6. Have you got any RSVPs? How many people are going to be attending that meeting tonight? Have you had any communications since yesterday when it was put out? How many people are attending?
Yes, sir. I've talked to the manager for the CDD in Gateway to arrange it, but because we wanted to make sure that we didn't announce a meeting for something that we weren't sure was going to happen, depending upon your vote, gentlemen.
How about Carol Barecki, Pelican Preserve Alliance? They made contact with them yet?
Sir, we're waiting from after the meeting to make contact with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Whitehead, question?
Yes, sir.
You're actually looking for us to move forward with this vote, correct?
Yes, they're looking for a vote to.
Yes, sir. And I think the county attorney has the motion, sir.
Richard?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if the board is going to entertain this request, I would respectfully suggest you incorporate my following comments into your motion, and that would be that this operation is approved pursuant to Section 252.38(3) Florida statutes, Lee County Ordinance Number 87-01, Lee County Emergency Resolution 22-10-02, as well as the current state of local emergency, that the landfill be opened for the limited purpose of receiving storm debris C&D material related to Hurricane Ian response only, that the waste would be accepted during daylight operations only, and that the material receipt would close within 30 days of the expiration of any local state of emergency or as further order set forth by the Board of County Commissioners. Commissioners, the purpose of my comments is to make clear that this is a limited opening strictly related to Hurricane Ian response only, so that we do not find ourselves in an untenable position. This is not a land use change. This is an emergency response.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The board heard the motion, so.
I'll make a motion to move forward.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. We have two public comment cards on this item, Liz Fuller and also Lisa McKnight. If you wish to speak, you're good? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussions? Any objection? I object. So 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Roger, next item.
Mr. Chair, and we have two quick updates for you to finish the day. First one is the temporary sheltering. Ms. Brady, will you please report?
Good morning, Commissioners. Just a follow-up on the state-run mission for shelter management in North Fort Myers. Continuing steps for transitional closing of the shelter ultimately. As of late last week, intake has stopped with the exception of any individuals or family who have specific post-hurricane needs due to Hurricane Ian. Our Human and Veterans Service and HOT team partners are focusing on those individuals and families who have pre-disaster homeless needs, and they are being reworked into what our normal process is. And our case management team will continue to focus on individuals and families who have post-storm needs specifically due to Hurricane Ian. Mr. Moore will discuss with you an update on some of the housing initiatives that are in place right now that the case management team is using to assist those individuals.
Thank you, Christine. Good morning, Commissioners. I believe we can all agree that housing is amongst the most critical components in our community's recovery. Recognizing this importance, staff from Emergency Management, Human and Veteran Services, and Community Development swiftly jumped to action to ensure Lee County leverages the collective resources of the state and federal government. Staff continue to work closely with FEMA, HUD, the Florida Department of Emergency Management, and many other agencies to advocate for Lee County's housing needs. We have built a collective understanding of the emerging housing needs of our community and developed a phased approach, which you see on the screen right now, to providing our residents with various pathways to permanent and stable housing. Mickey Rodzalski, Community Development Planning Manager, and Jeannie Sutton, Human Services Deputy Director, have done yeoman's work since the storm passed and will provide you with an update of our housing recovery activities to date. Mickey, Jeannie?
Good morning, Commissioners. It's almost noon. So our housing recovery plan is being built on the needs identified through assessments conducted by FEMA. And through these assessments, we know we must address temporary shelter for those who have been displaced, interim housing options for those repairing or rebuilding, and permanent housing for all affected. The immediate strategies, which are up on the board, have common objectives of getting roofs, overheads, and keeping people in their homes. The first objective is being supported through FEMA's Transitional Shelter Assistance Program, also known as TSA, and through the Down Payment Assistance Program funded by SHIP, which was approved earlier today by you all. The second objective is being supported by programs like mortgage and rent assistance, owner-occupied rehab, and the down payment, or the insurance deductible assistance. These programs have more than $10 million that have been allocated to funding the repair of homes so that people can stay at their homes as we work towards our short-term and long-term goals, which Jeannie will provide more information on.
So for the households that are unable to stay in their homes due to damage or other challenges that have been presented because of Hurricane Ian, we are exploring the use of FEMA direct housing. So that is typically viewed as FEMA trailers. We have been working very closely with FEMA to discuss various options associated with that program, including placing trailers in homeowners' own lots or the property that they already own. So that's going to be our primary way to use that program, is to utilize property that homeowners already own and keep them co-located with their house to oversee the repairs. Another creative option that FEMA has for direct housing is something called a multifamily repair and lease program, which allows FEMA to actually use multifamily properties that are already in existence and may be damaged and need minor repairs in order to be leased. FEMA will make those repairs and then lease those facilities out to be able to provide housing for people temporarily while they're locating other housing or rebuilding their homes. The final option on our priority list for direct housing is identification of group sites. That would be small group sites for where FEMA trailers will be placed. FEMA does provide case management for those folks while they're in that temporary housing setting, and our Human and Veteran Services teams will also be alongside of them to help ensure that they have a permanent housing plan after that assistance ends. In addition to that, we're looking to increase our housing stock overall. As you know, there was significant damage to the housing stock. So to do that, we're utilizing Community Development Block Grant and home funding from HUD to be able to create new housing stock and incentivize development wherever we possibly can. Some of the longer term options that we are also exploring to address needs is voluntary buyout programs. Many of you are familiar with CDBG-DR, disaster recovery funding that comes after a disaster. Most of that funding can be used to address housing needs. One of those ways to do that is through buyout programs, which allows for us to explore buying properties from homeowners that have experienced repetitive loss, flood loss, and damage, and then helping to relocate them. Again, that is a voluntary program that we could explore, as well as exploring partnerships with for-profit developers to incentivize the retention of residents here in Lee County. We want to keep our workforce steady and keep them housed, and a way that we could potentially do that is partnership with some for-profit developers. Questions?
Great. Any questions for staff?
Just a follow-up question, if you will, if I may. The governor, when he was in Fort Myers Beach, last week it talked about different augmentation to housing and really talked about some out-of-the-box thinking. I don't know if that's incorporated in this and or if we need some additional clarification and or information we can get to the public, because what he talked about certainly seemed to be very bold.
We are exploring absolutely every option and are willing to have a meeting with anybody that it presents themselves as having a potential solution.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you. Great presentation.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Roger.
Just one, one final thought from this desk today. We will all recall that we have 100% reimbursement from the federal government for all of our costs for the first 60 days. At day 4, in several conversations with Kevin Guthrie, who's the State Emergency Management Director, he mentioned that these extensions on that 60-day really come in 30-day increments, and that at about day 45, the state of Florida would be making a request to the federal government for an extension. I just want to remind ourselves that November 13th puts us at day 45, I think, plus or minus a day there. And that November 28th puts us at 60 days. And so I want to make sure that we don't lose sight as an organization of the need for the extension to that 60-day 100% reimbursement. Bay County, Mexico Beach, I think they had a total of what? 100 days? We think that 120 days certainly is not unreasonable. And so that will be our, one of our really large efforts.
Keep us apprised of what we need to do locally, and I still get calls every few days from DC from the last trip here, so whatever we need to do, I keep asking for the 120 days, but let us know what we need to do.
Yes, sir, we will.
Roger, real quick, back up a little bit. You covered debris collection. I have a question about, I don't know if Doug's here too. I know we had issues with Boca Grande. I've been contacted a lot by Boca Grande residents the last few weeks, and especially the last week, but there's only basically one truck. And I've heard, though, there's more trucks coming from Crowder Golf getting onto the island to get that debris collected, because I think Ashbrook was originally doing it, and I was worried about some conflict there, because I know there was a conflict with them not getting the contract, whether they're ignoring that area or not.
Yes, Commissioner, is that Boca Grande has had one truck from Ashburn in there. I was in conversation with them yesterday. They said they could bring 4 or 5 trucks in, but I told them I have to see that in writing so we can commit to them. Our plan B would to have Crowder Gulf go up there and conduct, and they could do a fairly speedy job, but at quite a higher rate. So I'm waiting on that feedback. If I don't get it today, we'll have to go to plan B, sir.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Wayne, good.
Oddly enough, spoke to many people in Boca Grande yesterday, and I know the governor's talking about, obviously, 4 different contracts for private and commercial. It certainly seems there's a fleet there, trying to identify who's there, because it's more than one truck, and they seem to be private people. Just FYI, the governor's talked about 4, it's not public yet, but there's 4 additional contractors that he was hiring, both for private property, C&D, as well as commercial. So all I can tell you is 6 or 7 different constituents from Boca Grande called me up and said there were multiple trucks there. Certainly didn't know where they came from.
Yes, sir, we'll follow up. As you know, people like Ashburn use multiple subcontractors, so we'll have to really get in detail on where those trucks came from. Yes, sir.
It was a pleasant exchange. It was positive. They saw a lot of action, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Some of those residents had contracted private people to come in, want to pay $2,500 to get the stuff at the curb. They just wanted to get rid of it. So I think it's both, probably maybe more trucks, but it's also people hiring private contractors to take it away, and they're kind of paid for it. That's the only bad thing.
Yes, sir, the conversation yesterday was very positive compared to other conversations we've had, so I think either they're going to move on it pretty quick, one way or the other. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, along those lines, it would be great if we could, the state missions that were actually shown last week, if we could start to fill in the blanks as we can try to get the administration to give us more information. That'd be really helpful, because I do know 4 contractors have been awarded contracts. It just hasn't been publicly released yet.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Roger, you have anything else on county manager items?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all for today.
Great. We're going to go back to committee appointments for the board. Commissioner Greenwald, do you have a committee appointment?
I do, Chairman. I have 2. Damon Schiller to Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I have a reappointment with Derek Botana, conservative land acquisition and stewardship.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. Any public comment? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner Hammond, do you have some?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a reappointment of Dustin Gardner to the local planning agency.
Second. We have a second. Any public comment? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. I have 1 reappointment. I need a motion and a second. Ray Blacksmith to the local LPA.
So moved.
Second.
Motion. We have a second. Commissioner Wayne. Any public comment? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner Sendelli.
I have 3 reappointments, Martha Lambert, Palmetto Point Special Improvement District, Elizabeth Bernstein for the Palmetto Point Special Improvement District, Paul Baracco for the Conservation and Land Acquisition Stewardship.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any public comment? Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Commissioner Wayne.
I have 5. The first one is local planning agency, Don Schultenberg. And then from Cherry Estates Operations, reappointments Kevin Cherry, Jack Groth, Ronald Payne, and Robert Pryor.
Second.
A motion second. Any public comment? Being none, come back to the board. Any objection? No objection. Motion carries. Thank you. County manager items, county attorney items.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You're quiet today, Richard. Come on. Gotta start paying you by the hours to get you to talk. Okay, this time we'll go public presentation of matters concerning citizens. Any public comment this time? Anything not on the agenda? Any public comment? Yes, sir. Mike Love? Yeah. How you doing?
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Love for the record. We at the NAACP, we have been receiving calls by local haulers saying they are not getting response from Corridor Gulf. They believe that they went through this hurricane just like all of you. And they lost a lot of their clients in this process. So they're looking for this, and they see millions of dollars that are leaving our county, and they're not getting jobs. So I don't know at what stage your contract is at. However, we're asking that minority contractors, also local contractors, haulers, be given the opportunity or even get a callback from these major companies. We are very concerned that they're not getting callback, so there's no opportunity there for them to get work for not only the owners, but for the workers. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, we'll come back to the board. I just want to address your concerns, and we've hearing that same concerns from all the residents in Lee County. We had people here at the last meeting. People have trucks, they want to do debris cleanup, but they have to go through the procurement process with the contractor. We have local people here that have trucks, but there's trucks coming from out of state, so I know it's confusing, but we are not involved with that procurement process. It's done through FEMA and through the contractors to the state. So I urge them to keep contracting, trying to contact Crowther and other companies that are doing the work, and they'll hire, based upon their criteria. But we don't have any control of that. We'll be happy to get with you afterwards with staff that'll explain that. Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the board before we adjourn? Okay, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.